It is the 8th day of September 2021. I noticed my stream last night started before I clicked the button when I watched the video today. Hope everybody's doing good. Let's play that little video clip there to get started.
There will soon be an end to this cold and wicked war when those hard-headed communists get what they're looking for. Only one thing that will stop them, and they're a ferocious fun. If General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb, they'll be fire, dust, and metal flying all around, and the radioactivity will burn them to the ground. If there's any commies left, they'll be all on the run. If General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb.
Yeah, imagine executing them on their wedding anniversary. The nuclear industry. Springfield, put an S on that and call it UK. Preston MP Sir Mark Hendrick fears for the future of Springfield's nuclear fuel plant. You know, Springfield, Simpsons, and there's Homer. IAEA, before we do that, let's cover a few of these headlines so I can get those people that are coming through for the first time in the proper perspective. Admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation. The IAEA was created anonymously. Nobody knows who actually created them in 1957. And they've been bound by the hip to the United Nations ever since. Allowable radiation standards are based on natural stuff, not man-made. That should horrify you. Okay, so then think about this one here. Could less radiation in food make the public feel unsafe? Could less radiation in the food make the public feel unsafe? So the IAEA admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of man-made radiation. And the standards are based on natural, not man-made. So then, a play of words, what they done for Japan was, could less radiation in the food make the public feel unsafe? In other words, what they were saying was the public was fear-mongering because they were afraid of Fukushima radiation. Doomsday-like radiation released if the fire in pool at Unit 4 would be a global catastrophe. Nuclear waste expert. Well, that's reactor 4 over there. Well, it was. And the people to the right are actually faking it. So imagine if Greenpeace or Arnie Gunnarsson or Helen Caldercott or people with a bit of pull, or some celebrity or musician or football or soccer or hockey star, etc., was to tweet out that picture. I'll get it out of the way just in case you want to get a screen capture. Imagine if they tweeted out that picture and said, look, they're faking being on top of reactor 4. It doesn't actually exist. They're faking it. That would actually be the death of the nuclear industry. It would die right on the spot. The next morning, the world would turn on nuclear permanently. All day, every day, for years straight. So, just to give you context, I'll get it out of the way. the people, don't think of the people, but think of the media, CBS, BBC, CNN, ABC Australia, the actual editors and producers and the medias themselves have produced videos to convince you that Reactor 4 to your left wasn't damaged. It actually looked perfect, like to the right, when it actually looks like the building to the left.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Yeah, so imagine if Greenpeace was to say, look, folks, they're faking it. What else are they doing? Okay. So, just to... like, you hear how Hollywood says you have a nuclear war and the soot and everything from the fires will go up and block out the sun for decades and plants won't grow and animals will starve to death, etc., right? But actually what happens is the radioactive fallout covers the planet. This is Fukushima radioactive fallout, by the way, covering the planet. And that's the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean you see over there. So this is the Pacific Ocean, a continuous plume. This is important to tell the rest of the story. This is the Atlantic Ocean. This is America and Canada and Iceland and Greenland and Europe and United Kingdom and France and blah, 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 Russia and China and everybody else, right? So the whole planet covered in radioactive fallout. So it's invisible. You can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. But it affects all species. Okay, so let's get through this and get busy. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. It does that by radioactive fallout. Just a single nuclear power plant can cause an extinction event around the world. And so then you see, why did they fake it? Because a single nuclear power plant can cause an extinction event around the world. Well, you're going to want revenge, and who are you going to be getting revenge on? Well, the nuclear industry is the most obvious one, right? So they captured the regulators and the universities and the medias. There's your evidence. Nobody contradicted them. Sad day for reality. Fukushima radiation is still circling the globe, and the levels are consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. It takes 40 days, and this will go on for millenniums. By the way, that's global fallout is global warming. That's actually global warming you're looking at. To the left, it pulses energy at the speed of light, covering the entire planet, pulsing energy at the speed of light every second, long past the human experience. So when you see deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world, now you can understand it, right? Circling the globe, it's actually a continuous plume right around the globe, but it's moving. Some is thicker, some is less, but it's a continuous plume. And this has been going on for 75 years, but now Fukushima happened. Fallout could have affected the whole world, and obviously I showed you one of the models. I'll show you another one. It affected the whole world. It's called radioactive fallout. Wherever it lands, it pulses energy for thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of years. Example, Xenon-133, a United States study, academic study, radioactive Xenon-133 in Washington was 450,000 times above detection levels. And it persisted for weeks. Actually, like I showed you, every 40 days it's circling the globe. But now it's a continuous plume. An invisible snowstorm circling the globe. That's just one of the many studies showing you it actually happened. The documentation. I don't know if that matters anymore, but that's the documentation. Now, the xenon causes a dramatic increase in lung cancers, not just to humans, but to all species. Insects, birds, animals, mammals, all species. No species is immune, unless you're the Hulk or Spider-Man, I guess, which is created by the nuclear industry to indoctrinate your loved ones. Turns into cesium. So they're getting powerful X-rays every second for the rest of your life. The world's food chain could be compromised. Japan's radiation seems inescapable. Well, yeah, the world's food chain is compromised. What does that actually mean, though? Worse than radioactive rain, after Fukushima, the fallout was suspended near the Earth's surface without settling down. So imagine a snowstorm that doesn't settle down, but it's pulsing energy every second. The pulses are hitting each other. It could pulse 20 feet, each atom. But it's a snowstorm of atoms, and they're hitting each other at the speed of, almost the speed of light, and they change, so gamma, X-ray, or gammas, alpha, beta, neutrons pulse almost at the speed of light. They hit each other almost at the speed of light and change direction. That's a braking effect. Bremsung in Germany. It's a braking where it changes direction. It creates an X-ray, a special kind of an X-ray. So it sterilizes the earth and the trees and the forests. And we've done the research expeditions now that confirm that. Also, the cesium remains... Now, when you hear cesium... Whenever you hear cesium, you got to realize there's endless atoms of cesium per se, because they change into other atoms too when they decay. There's no such thing as a half-life. There's what they call 10 half-lives. But it actually continues. They just say it's harmless after 10, but that's simply not true. And they radiate everything they touch. So you got all the uranium isotopes, americium isotopes. The biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods from a nuclear meltdown are curium isotopes. And you need lead shielding 20 times thicker for curium than you do for plutonium, which is lethal, extremely lethal. Okay, so cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column, but it's all the daughters of americium and neptunium and strontium and technetium and plutonium and uranium, which are, by the way, the reactors run on. So when you hear cesium or xenon, you got to realize these plumes of Fukushima, because this is the Atlantic Ocean here, the model stops, but the plumes never stop coming out. And these plumes are based on venting, not based on actual inventories that they lost during the nuclear meltdowns. Radioactive materials like cesium and curium and uranium, plutonium, and etc., 1,000 fission products are brought back to the surface soil each year by plant growth and radioactive pollen. So the world's food chain could be compromised. The world's food chain is my apologies. When I recorded that for a different format, I forgot to turn the volume off. I'll resolve that after the show for the copy that I'm using. Government hid radiation simulation because it was very, very bad. Showed a serious contamination over a wide area, like the northern hemisphere. The United Nations Committee Chairman, which is created by the military-industrial complex. We wouldn't expect to see health effects in children or workers or anyone else. Nuclear companies have infiltrated the universities and your medias, of course, by proxy. It is the duty of the scientific community to lie to the public to reduce fear and anxiety about radiation. But it's not the duty to lie and manipulate and deceive and coerce. The Economist, a major media worldwide, On the positive side of a nuclear meltdown scene, kids just need to gargle after being outside, because outside is bad. Instead of evacuating the kids, they kept them indoors. The ultimate betrayal. Every facet of nuclear turned out to be the ultimate betrayal. In Japan, that is something that children mostly do anyway, says The Economist. The Japanese government withheld the radiation forecast to prevent the truth, and aka causing panic. This is why you have sirens, 100 sirens within 10 miles of a nuclear power plant, so you can panic and get out of harm's way, right? So not to prevent causing panic, but to prevent people from getting out of harm's way. Alice in Wonderland was used to convince children in Japan that nuclear power has some redeeming attributes. Alice in Wonderland. You can go outside, just remember to gargle after. Radiation forecast, Kyoto, can by no means be released to the public, decided the government on March the 15th, 4 days after. Well, at March the 15th, you had 4 reactors detonated and lost their inventories. Showed a radioactive cloud could spread over Tokyo, when in reality it spread over the entire planet. Superhero. Fukushima superhero tells kid the arch enemy is bad reputation. So rather than evacuate the children, they use fake superheroes. You know, like the Hulk and Spider-Man, superheroes. You can't be a superhero because you don't have magic powers. Only their characters can have attributes that are considered superheroes. Radiation forecast was held by the government. Releasing it would cause panic. The ministry, which is the inbreeds of the inbreeds, decided such data would be unavailable due to loss of power. In other words, they wouldn't have a pension or something. That was their theory. So they decided not to tell people because they couldn't boss people around forever like their parents had done. We got to stop these sorts of reports coming out. Jerry Thomas from United Kingdom, by the way. And sorry. Almost through this, 2 more to go. Fukushima nuke report so shocking that the government of Japan decided to treat it as if it didn't exist. It don't exist. It don't exist. Japan Times column, as the public worldwide sickens over time, heads hopefully will finally roll. Preston MP Sir Mark Henry fears for the future of The Simpsons. Employees at the nuclear fuel plant. What a revolting character he turned out to be. So I suggest him to look Britain's nuclear veterans in the eye and tell them that they're imagining all the illnesses that they have. Preston MP Sir Mark Henry, Sir, you call him Sir. His name is Sir. Imagine how giddy he was when he got that title. I'm better than everybody, I'm a Sir. To raise concerns about the future of Springfields, fuel processing facility at Salwick, and the UK nuclear power industry, the ridiculous gobbly nuclear industry in the United Kingdom. So if in reality that Sir was to be in that position there where he had a piece of a fuel rod right alongside of him, he'd actually die instantly. And so seeing that on TV for 20 odd years straight, and then 1,000 years of reruns, indoctrinates children to be complacent about this subject. See? That's what that was all about. 3 days without an accident. So it's normal to have nuclear accidents. This is the indoctrination, the revolting, by the way, disgusting, despicable, spineless, soulless, heartless. And during an 85-minute Westminster Hall parliamentary debate, he called on the government to drop a new mixed energy policy, invest in nuclear power, and cooperate with China to develop a carbon-free world. Carbon-free world. Like Hinkley Point C. Look how carbon-free that is. It's using every precious metal on the planet. But I want you to look in the background, the very way in the background. What do you see? Farms. So all the radiation being released ends up in the farms and poisons the children and people worldwide, not just United Kingdom. The ultimate betrayal is 99% of the pictures. You look up nuclear power plants online, 99% of the pictures, the plants are built in farmland, surrounded by farms, active farms. Actually, that's actually evil, by the way. Speaking in support of genocide workers, omnicide workers at the Springfield plant, he highlighted the plant's local and national importance as a genocide machine. Springfields is surrounded by farms, by the way. He said Springfields is the UK's only civil nuclear manufacturing site. By the way, that's because you can't use Donneray for the next 300 years because it's nuclear wasteland. Oh, and Windscale, they changed the name of that because of the radioactive fallout. In fact, Windscale today, every day since 1955, there's 8 million liters, 2 million gallons of mixed oxide fuel contaminated wastewater hemorrhaging into the coastlines. And studies showed that communities in Ireland and Scotland on the coastlines were poisoned by Windscale's discharges into the ocean. Many people suffering debilitating illnesses and catastrophic cancers, clusters of cancers because of Windscale. By the way, Windscale has uncontained pools out in the open air. And nobody even knows what kind of fuel is actually in it for decades and decades and decades. Hemorrhaging into the air. And Windscale, now they changed the name because of what they done, is now called Sellafield. It got the name Sellafield because after the nuclear meltdown, Windscale done something extraordinary. Let's see if I can find it for you. I probably won't find it because I've been... Bear with me. Give me a second. Let it populate. Yeah, I jimmied this together with graphics. It was cut, that video there, I put everything else there in order to articulate what he's actually saying. So, you picture this, the Windscale had pile, what you call a pile, which was the nuclear reactor, is a pile, which is appropriate really when you think about how they treat the world after. Had a nuclear fire. They didn't go to the universities, nuclear universities, looking for volunteers. They didn't go to the nuclear corporations and look for volunteers. They didn't go to other nuclear power plants looking for volunteers. No. 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 You know what they done? They went to the theaters and kidnapped people from the theaters and took them to the nuclear meltdowns.
The police from the factory had turned up looking for volunteers, and they brought a bus, and they decided the best way to get the volunteers was to go to the cinema and volunteer the back 2 rows at the show to go into the factory to, as it turned out, to help push the fuel rods out of the reactor.
So why would you kidnap people from the theater? Remember, back in those days, the rich people sat up front, right? In their 50s. And the poor people would sit in the very back rows. The police went there with buses and stole people from the theater to go to a nuclear meltdown. Try wrapping your mind around that one. And then he changed the name to Sellafield to hide that particular and other crimes that they committed during that period. Sellafield. This is Sellafield. It's a mixed oxide fuel facility. Hemorrhaging radiation. These pools are boiling off all the time. Those rods are still splitting the atoms. Those rods are still producing the power for 1 million homes. They're still boiling. They boil off that water. The water is saturated with trillions of atoms per liter. They're pulsing energy every second. All day, every day, that's released into the environment. And that's an extinction event on its own. And it's been abandoned for 40 years to just keep the water to it. That's it. They don't even know what's in it anymore. They have no records. Not accidentally, but on purpose. Back to that story. It is a source of high valued employment, their nuclear facility at Springdale, along with aerospace to the Lancaster economy moving forward. A carbon neutral future. Carbon neutral future. Carbon neutral future. Up to 120 redundancies at the site, which currently employs 800 people and supports around 4,000 jobs across the wider supply chain. But no matter what energy source you're going to do, it's going to have those similar attributes, yeah? By the way, don't be fooled by false promise of nuclear jobs. You end up spending the money you made on your children to try to get them to the age of 20 because they're dying of cancers that you brought home on your clothing and washed it in the laundry and contaminated theirs. Carbon-free world. We might as well buy every Brit an ostrich than spend billions more on the nuclear weapons. Remember that? We might as well buy everybody an ostrich than implement anything that he's saying. He's obviously knows the difference. Carbon neutral future. Carbon neutral future is at risk. Carbon neutral futures. Carbon neutral future. So do you think there's a pattern there? Carbon neutral future, carbon neutral future. Is that a pattern, I wonder? Or am I just being an a-hole? Hinkley Point C, carbon neutral. Well, let's look at some beautiful pictures of the carbon-free Hinkley Point. My goodness, that is so carbon-free. Wow, when I grow up, I want to be a nuclear power plant. Look at it. They're using all the precious metals on the planet, everything. You can't possibly get any more precious metals because they're all stuck into that. They need 1 million gallons a minute, and there's 1 billion creatures in each glass of water, boiled off, so carbon-free. So it's wonderful, it makes me want to cry. Look how carbon-free it is. Oh, and that carbon-free site, by the way, is surrounded by farms. Because the reason it's carbon-free is because it kills carbon like you. You eat the food and die. Do you think that's an accident that they build these places in farmlands? They're hemorrhaging radiation. Once they start working, they're hemorrhaging radiation. Fuel pools are, like Sellafield is surrounded by farms. And Sellafield has uncontained fuel pools everywhere. They don't even know what's in it. But they know they got to keep the water to it or it'll blow up on them. Hemorrhaging radiation goes in, lots of it goes into the farms. We know how the farms will suck up the radiation. It's not like they don't know. Carbon-free future. Because, yeah, you're gone. Less carbon. You're dead and gone because you ate that food. China General Nuclear, which owns a significant stake in Hinkley Point C. United Kingdom can't even build their own nuclear power plant. The nuclear industry couldn't even build their own plant. They got to get China to do it for them. And our involvement with France. France! Poison everybody. And I mean everybody. When they done all their nuclear testing. By the way, Britain done lots of nuclear testing, right? Britain used to wait for the wind to blow across Australia, and then they would set off their nuclear weapons. Montebello, throughout all the nuclear testing, and they also had all kinds of dirty bombs in Australia that the British blew up. And the British, of course, went to Christmas Island, destroyed that beautiful oasis, that incredible paradise. They nuked the shit right out of that. And then they said to their brave workers and soldiers who went there and participated, "What? You never got sick. Radiation is like eating a banana, silly." And for 70 years, they denied them any health care whatsoever. No, you couldn't possibly get sick. Wow, my goodness. One thing is certain, we have to cooperate with China to develop a carbon-free world. By the way, last year, 2020, in a 12-month period, renewables equal to 300 nuclear power plants came online. You'd have to build 300 nuclear power plants to equal the resources that of renewables that came online. And worldwide, there's only 440 nuclear power plants. And they expect this year to be the equivalent of 600 nuclear power plants coming online. They're lying to you because they actually hate you. This is a secret society, a death cult. But let's not just stop there. The economies of nuclear fuel reprocessing, a case study of Windscale, the Thorpe plant, right? They mentioned in that article, by the way. But Windscale is a mixed oxide fuel process, and they take nuclear weapons and fuel that's already gone through a chain reaction and then reprocess it, and because they got no intentions of storing it, because then you wouldn't pollute the environment, radioactive isotopes, right? So they make mixed oxide fuel, which is the worst, literally the worst thing you can do. There's only Britain and Russia, Mayak, and La Hague in France that actually does this. It's illegal in America, illegal in Canada. Because what you're doing is you're taking isotopes that are lethal and now you're making them 1 million times or even 1 billion times more lethal by putting them through a chain reaction again. It's literally the stupidest thing you can do. And it's guaranteed to exterminate the species through your country and the planet. Mortality in Cumberland during 1959-78 with references to cancer in young people around Windscale. In fact, there was one study, I can't find it today, there was one study where they said that the cancer around Windscale, now known as Sellafield, is caused by the flu. The leukemia clusters is caused by the flu. And nobody's allowed to have a debate, so they said, okay, well, Windscale's safe, because it didn't cause the cancer, that was the flu. Imagine how degenerate you got to be to come up with a study like that. That's the norm, though, for the United Kingdom academic community for some reason. You don't suppose that wind scale being surrounded by farms got something to do with it? All the radiation hemorrhaging out? Cancer in Cumbria, the wind scale connection. And then Hinkley Point C and cancer connection is the next one in the future, surrounded by farms. You gotta be some seriously evil, demented, twisted, demonic demon to build a nuclear site in farmland. You really gotta be some twisted, sick, despicable wacko to do something like that, folks. And the occurrence of radioactive fallout over Norway. Not just the farms, but Norway's farms, Norway's drinking water, Norway's communities, as a result of wind scale. Well, it's actually as a constant release is coming at a wind scale and La Hague in France. What France done to the French Polynesians, that's some serious twisted stuff. They raided every single person in French Polynesian communities. Everybody got sick from it. And it was on purpose. Same as the United Kingdom went to Australia and they waited for the wind to blow across Australia. There was one study showed that in Montebello, they waited for the wind to blow toward Adelaide, the capital of Australia, was 96,000 counts per minute. 2,400 kilometers away. There's some sick, twisted, sick puppies in the nuclear industry, folks. Nuclear fuel reprocessing and related discharges. Like, it's well known Sellafield is a death factory. It's a disease factory. Springfield nuclear power is the same thing in the United Kingdom. Desorptions of fission products from intertidal sediment contaminated by wind scale, nuclear fuel reprocessing discharges. Ionizing radiation in human gender proportions at birth in concise view of literature. The wind scale fire and the Chernobyl, just leave Chernobyl out of this equation right now. The wind scale fire caused alterations to the human sex ratio, the male to female ratio. There's more males than females across Europe. And childhood cancers and childhood leukemias are consistently elevated near nuclear power plants. All kinds of studies on this, by the way. Even research reactors have those types of attributes. But this is true for insects and birds and animals and mammals throughout the entire hemisphere. All the way back through nuclear testing on top of that. Childhood leukemia in young people living close to nuclear reprocessing sites. An increased incidences of leukemias has been recorded close to Britain's two nuclear reprocessing sites, the Sellafield and Donerae, which is now going to be 300 years to clean that up. Two hypotheses have been advanced to explain the excesses. They're not going to blame it on the nuclear. They're going to blame one of it is on population mixing. Wrap your mind around it. These cancer clusters are because black and white people are having sex, or you know what I mean? Bigoted, racist, and bias and prejudice pricks. The mortality and cancer morbidity experience of workers at the British nuclear fuel. The mortality and cancer morbidity experience of workers. The evidence, like I've done entire presentations year after year on Sellafield of just academic studies showing that Sellafield is a nightmare for the entire planet. Its discharges. A sediment history of Sellafield's discharges. The evidence is so easy to find it defies any rationale that it exists anymore anywhere on the planet. Variations in the concentration of plutonium, strontium-90, and alpha emitters in human teeth collected within the British Isle. In fact, studies done in the United Kingdom is that plutonium from Sellafield is in all children's teeth throughout the whole country. Plutonium. This is the nuclear industry. I've come for the children. And that's what that politician is. He's coming for your children by keeping Springfields nuclear facility active. Variations. Evidence of infective causes of childhood leukemia. Comparison of a Scottish new town with nuclear reprocessing sites in Britain. Increases of leukemia in young people that cannot be explained in terms of radiation have been recorded near both of Britain's nuclear reprocessing plants at Donerae and Sellafield. Well, like, when you find it around all the sites worldwide, maybe, just maybe, it's nuclear. That's why you got terrorist laws, by the way. It's because it has those types of effects. Let me take you back to that carbon-free comment that politician from the United Kingdom was talking about. Go read the story here. Ottawa country to test David Bessie emergency sirens on Friday. By the way, you can see in the background of that nuclear power plant, David Bessie is surrounded by farmland. They said that nuclear energy is a dangerous pseudo-solution to the climate crisis. Like Hinkley Point, it's a dangerous pseudo-solution to the climate crisis. Scientists, nuclear energy is a waste of time. Hey, it's carbon-free, Dana. Yeah, but nuclear reactors are not clean and they're not zero emissions. In fact, all nuclear power plants need their own coal, oil, or gas plants. It needs 2 of them. Yeah, but it's carbon neutral future, Dana. No. Countries that backed renewables over nuclear power cut more CO2. And nuclear fallout is global warming, not carbon. Plants can't live without carbon. What do you put in your greenhouses? Carbon. Nations that embrace renewable energy have significantly cut their emissions, but those pursuing nuclear power fail to do so, researchers have found. Carbon neutral future is at risk, says the United Kingdom death machine. Nuclear power should not be considered an effective low-carbon energy source. But it's carbon neutral, Dana. No. Nuclear power hinders the fight against climate change. Yeah, but it's carbon-free nuclear, Dana. No. Renewable energy provides lower emissions compared to nuclear energy by up to 90 times. Ah, yes. The 7th nuke shipment leaves from Japan. This is reprocessed fuel from La Hague in France. And so here's a mixed oxide fuel facility in Japan. It was called Reactor 3. It doesn't exist anymore. But hey, the media, your loving, crazy, lunatic, nuclear controlled media, is trying to convince you that it looks like this. It doesn't look like that. I know because I went there. See? And this is supposed to be on top of the building to your left. This is a mixed oxide facility. You can't get near that. It's a lethal dose from a football field away or more. And it had decades of reactor cores at the top of each of the reactors in Japan. They're also melted down too, or detonated and atomized in aerosol and released into the environment. Okay, so a shipment of nuclear fuel containing highly radioactive plutonium headed to the French port of Cherbourg overnight Tuesday, late at night, en route to Japan. And so before dawn, in the early mornings of the hours, an AFP photographer spotted the controversial cargo in transit under heavy security, including a convoy of police vehicles and police officers on foot in France. Because when France protests, they don't mess around. France does not mess around. Let me try that again. Then French, I gotta put in France. French, not French, France. France. Good thing I got a memory anyway. Maybe I don't. That doesn't matter. The hell, today's not my day. One more try. Here we go. I got so much. If you're not paying attention, it boop. I'll try to adjust the volume in real time for you. Here's the French protesting nuclear.
The clashes were violent and widespread. Hundreds of police and anti-nuclear protesters chased each other through the fields and woodland near Vallon.
There you go.
Roadblocks were set up to try to prevent more protesters converging on the area, but at one point a group managed to block a section of the railway line.
You got to dress like the police when you do that, and get fire hoses with the big brass spigots on the top of them, because the fire hoses are flexible. So when they're holding up their shield, if you use fire hoses, you come over the shields and you can bludgeon them with it. That's the right way to do it. Get hockey gloves and wear full face helmets and stuff like that, and get like shoulder pads from football and knee pads and elbow pads. And what you should do, like down in the United Kingdom, for instance, is you get all the little petite, skinny people up front, and then keep the people in the back kind of hid away, and they got baseball bats and everything. And when the police attack, the little small people get out of the way, and then the big lumberjacks with the baseball bats can go out and pound the shit out of the goblins. I'm just saying, if you're going to do it, that's probably a better way to go about it. Because they're going to do it to you, okay? For the nuclear industry. In fact, the nuclear industry had 9,000 people in India after Fukushima arrested and charged with sedition for protesting against a new nuclear power plant. Imagine how insane the industry actually got to be to do something like that. Calling mixed oxide nuclear fuel a very dangerous material. Greenpeace, who sold us out, obviously, said it should be considered a high-level waste and not be permitted to leave the country, which is true, but they only quote Greenpeace. They won't quote anybody else because Greenpeace is the player, right? Greenpeace kept their pie hole shut about reactors 3 and 4, the fake pools. This is said to be the 7th shipment of mixed oxide fuel from France to Japan since 1999. So in order for France to make the mixed oxide fuel, they have at La Hague in France, they would have incredible releases into the environment, absurd releases into the environment unimaginable, hideous, monstrous releases into the environment. Two English boats will pick up the shipment from Cherbourg, which is in France, right? The English boats, United Kingdom boats. And the cargo will power 2 nuclear mixed oxide fuel reactors surrounded by farms and poison millions of people each year. As of March, there were 9 nuclear reactors in operation in Japan, compared with 54 before the Fukushima accident. So the nuclear industry still managed to get 9 back up and running. Uranium surges to a 6-year high as fun. This is a terrible story. As the fund buys up physical supplies. But what actually it should say is uranium is uranium prices are artificially inflated by a single company buying up supplies. Because that's what happened. Uranium, the commodity, the death machine, used to fuel cancer factories called nuclear power plants and disease factories known as nuclear power plants, has surged to the highest level since 2015, due in part to a single fund aggressively, a single fund. This is shocking, where an investment firm took the money that investors gave him to grow and bought up useless uranium, because the price is going to go right straight back down again immediately, and the investors are going to lose endless millions of dollars from the $750 million worth of fuel they bought up so far, due in part to a single, aggressively single fund. Investment firm Sprott Incorporation. An investment firm. The worst thing an investment firm can do with its money is buy uranium. What an evil, cowardly thing to do, eh? What an unimaginably evil thing to do with money from the people invested, is go buy uranium with it. Earlier this year, launched its Physical Uranium Trust. Physical Uranium Trust this year. And recently commented on Twitter. What? Wow! On Twitter! And that's news? Oh. About how much physical uranium has been buying, aiding to the commodity's recent bull run. That's not when a single company shows up and buys uranium that is not even a uranium company, that's not a bull run. That's a fabricated bull run meant to get people to invest in it temporarily so they can steal their money. Sprott has amassed 24 million pounds, which is roughly $720 million of investors' money that could be lost. Sometimes buying more than 500,000 pounds in a single day, according to social media accounts. Social media. I'm on social media. Maybe you should repeat what I'm saying. Because this story is only about getting people to buy stocks, eh? According to its website and social media account. So, Sprott is based in Toronto, which is not, its head company is in Alberta actually, and has offices in Connecticut, Carlsbad, which is New Mexico, which is nuclear wasteland territory, by the way, where WIP is to, and Vancouver. They were attacking me for years, right, when I was out there. The Central Fund of Canada Limited is an investment holding company. The companies provide alternatives for investors in holding marketable golds and silver related investments. And they just jacked that company's resources to buy up uranium to artificially inflate the uranium market. Wow. And uranium prices must rise further to spur the restart of production to meet uncovered utility demands after 2023. So what they're talking about is they bought all the uraniums out there. They're going to hang on to it. Now the mining companies got to go ahead and produce some uranium. And maybe people will invest in the mining companies because they don't know this story. What a low-life scumbag trick to do. What a horrific, degenerate thing to do to people. What kind of friggin' low-life scumbag monster thought that up? What kind of weasel, demonic demon came up with this routine? Oh, yeah, the nuclear industry. Oh, and then Kazatomprom, which is a top miner of uranium in Kazakhstan, said it would keep its output at reduced levels through 2023, removing supply for the market to artificially inflate stocks. Uranium futures on NYMEX surged by 15%, making it the best weekly gain in more than a decade. Right? This is exactly what I said would happen. Happened. And so people were like, wow, that stock just blew up 15%. I'm buying into that. Yeah, but next week it's going to go deflate again. This is what they've been doing now since Fukushima happened. Non-stop. It's just another facet of the scam, right? Yeah, they banned me from Twitter. They're now trading at the highest levels in 6 years. They closed my account down. They closed down my YouTube channel. They accused me of having a Facebook. I don't even have a Facebook. They arrested me and accused me of slandering them with my Facebook, but I don't even have a Facebook. Which was probably them. Say they started up a Facebook with my name, slandered themselves, a false flag, and then I get the blame for it, right? Lunatics, boy. They're now trading at the highest levels in 6 years, and they're showing little sign of letting up. Because an investment firm come in and just bought everything up to make it happen. What an incredible scam. The rally also benefited Camcor, the degenerate Camcor. One of the world's largest... Camcor ran a scam a couple of years ago, but they got a refund from Revenue Canada that they weren't entitled to because they took their money, shipped it out of the country, so they didn't pay taxes in Canada. Revenue Canada appealed it, but for that little time frame where they got away with it, their stocks went up. And so they never said what happened. They just said, Camco stocks are up. You got to buy. It's a bear market, right? This is what they done. We covered it over and over and over. Oh, and Australia, uranium, scumbag Australia. The Mineral Council of Australia, all of them should be grabbed by the scruff of the neck and dragged into Fukushima. Thumbs down for Durnford is a grotesque attack on environmentalism. This story is actually important. Wednesday, the 21st of September 2016, when they gave me 6 gag orders, so I wouldn't tell you stories like this about certain players they needed to protect, goes down as the darkest hour, a total eclipse for justice in Canada and the environmental cause throughout the northern hemispheres. And that the guilty verdict against Dana Durnford, me, is a perversion of the legal norms that condemn the Canadian government to be in the Great Banana Republic of the North, enslaved servitude to the global nuclear industry and its uranium mining profiteers, which is that last story, right? The greatest beneficiary of this hideous court decision is that story I just read you before this. And Japanese investors in the Canadian uranium and nuclear, including TEPCO and Hitachi General Electric, which are the very source of the radioactive death curse along the western coast and in the atmosphere of North America and across the Arctic regions. And it's an overt attempt to muzzle his criticism in regards to the effects of Fukushima radioactive releases and crimp any donations for his scientific research, and has a chilling effect on the anti-nuclear cause and a larger environmental movement, to crimp any donations for his scientific research, because my research is free. I'm sure to hear that, James Oldhand. Sure they've done you. But anybody that's interested, you should look up that story and read it. And the last paragraph, this is by Yoshi Shimatsu, is the ex-editor of the Japan Sunday Times. The animosity equivalent of CBS in the United States, or CBC in Canada, or the BBC in the United Kingdom. He came out in defense of me. It was a hangman's kangaroo court that they dragged me into, and was a slap suit meant to bankrupt me. How dare anybody criticize the nuclear industry with facts and documentation? How dare us? How dare we do that? We got the water, the thermostat installed in the truck today. And last night we raised enough money to cover the expenses. James Lucid donated 120. My goodness, James. Thank you, because you donated the day before that too. And Sandra C. donated 25, and those 2 days of donations covered exactly the expenses. It was $100 for the 101 for the part, $25 worth of fuel or fluids, and $80 for labor. So I got away. We raised just enough to cover it. So that was amazing. I'm unbelievably grateful for everybody. Thank you. So good night, everybody. Organic Slant, thank you, my friend. We love you too. Tom Morris, thank you. Dana Nasana. James Oldhand. I'm sorry you had that experience, James. Bless you, my friend. You're a good person. You didn't deserve that. James Lucid, hugs, my friend. Thank you again. Sandra, hugs for you too, honey. Thank you again. Danny San. And so they attacked me because I'm not an investment firm, right? I'm not part of the nuclear industry, so therefore we're one of the few, literally the only educational program to counter the nuclear industry with documentation in history that ever existed that is honest, 100% honest, 100% of the times. And I do that by providing the documentation as I'm talking, so you can scrutinize everything I say and show, and you won't find me wanting, because I have good intentions for all the species and humanity. Right? Somebody like me has to exist. Scott Brady, good night, everybody. Magic Mushrooms, thank you. Jeffrey Brown, hi Jeffrey. Colette S, hugs to Colette. Hope you're doing good, honey. Ella, hugs for Ella. And Chad, Satan Official. It's one of the greatest sites out there, isn't it? Greatest names, Satan Official. I see I had a few trolls hacking at me. What a coward thing to do. I only got 23 people on my show, but the trolls got to show up and attack me. The other night I had 40 thumbs down with 27 people on my show. Tonight I got 25 thumbs down. That's their way of showing they actually like me. They actually like me. So look at that there. 25 thumbs down on the show tonight so far. I'll refresh that. I probably got another one there waiting for me now. 25 thumbs down with 23 people on my show. That'll go away after 10 or 12 hours. But it's meant to spam my videos so it doesn't get out there, right? Oh. Yeah, 28 thumbs up, 25 thumbs down. For being an honest person, that's the price you're going to pay, right? James Olhan says, they tried to shut me up and scare me, but I shouted even louder from the rooftops, which is the right and appropriate thing to do. Like they attacked me, they have all kinds of accounts that are ghost accounts, making up stories about me, but nobody publicly will come out and attack me. Nobody of credibility, right? Yeah, thumbs down means I'm getting through. It does. They're not attacking me because they're bored. They're paid to do it, right? That's what they get paid to do. It means nothing to me, right? It really doesn't. I'm not going to lose any sleep over being attacked. I'm at this all day, every day, year after year. This is non-stop. 24/7. This is what I do now. I do nothing else, only work at telling these stories. And so there's no fun in that. And I'm under siege. I'm accused of hideous stuff. But I'm not a bad person for being honest. I'm not a bad person for telling the truth. I'm not a bad, and neither are you. Those who come here walk away well prepared to bash the nuclear industry. Thank goodness. And the majority of them are probably already well capable before they get here. See everybody tomorrow night. I won't have such a hard day tomorrow. Today was a tough day. A brutal day, actually. I'm glad to see it over. So it's kind of a short show tonight because I'm burnt out. It's been a long day. I'll be okay by tomorrow night. We got tons and tons and tons. We got over 1,000 stories to get through. We haven't caught up. And there's new stories every day, so we kind of mix it up. God bless everybody and hugs for everybody. You folks are awesome. You have a nice night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks. Good night, folks.